Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video. Welcome back to Monster Hunter Rise, and it's time for another weapon preview. This time around, we're going to be taking a look at the Charge Blade at your request, and if you guys have been with the channel for a while, then you'll be aware of the fact that Charge Blade was my most played weapon during Monster Hunter World. Now, when Iceborne came along, the Gun Lance overtook it, but the Charge Blade still holds a very special place in my heart. It is hands down one of my favorite weapons in the entire franchise, and I can't stand playing it in the Monster Hunter Rise demo. And I know some of you guys might be surprised by that, but I'm really not. Because I didn't really like playing Charge Blade during the Iceborne beta either, because once you get used to certain comfort skills like focus and magazine, it becomes extremely hard to go back and not have those skills available to you, because it basically makes the entirety of the weapon's moveset feel a little bit sluggish, because it takes you longer to get your files. It takes you even longer to get to double charge slash, because at least back in World, focus would also reduce the time it would take for you to be able to let go of charge slash, which just made the whole weapon feel a lot more agile. And the additional number of files also increased the time that your shield would be buffed, which made it so that you didn't have to buff your shield as often and you'd have files available to do other more offensive moves. And not having those two skills really slows down the tempo of the weapon to the point where it just feels downright unfamiliar. Or maybe they also changed something else in the Charge Blade that makes it feel slower, but if they did, that's the only change that they actually did to the weapon, because most of the moves are pretty much the same moves that you know from Monster Hunter World and Iceborne, with the exception of Savage Axe Slash. Now, I've seen a lot of people just come out and claim like, oh, Savage Axe is not going to be present in Monster Hunter Rise. And to those people, all I can really tell you is like, hey, remember how in this demo we can't actually do Blast Dash with the Gun Lance, and yet there's a trailer where you can clearly see the hunter do a Blast Dash? Yeah. Like, don't start saying that certain moves are not available in the final game, because all you can really say is that those moves are not available in this demo. So that means that we still might see Savage Axe make a comeback. But as of now, it is still not here. So what are the moves that we have for the Charge Blade? Let's take a look here, shall we? You still have your basic combo, which is like you just spam X, and you get the exact same moves that you used to get back in World. And by the way, keep in mind that the last hit there is also a guard point, because the shield is in front of your character at the end, and pretty much most of the moves with the Charge Blade where they end with the shield in front of your character, they actually count as guard points. If you then press A, you'll see that you have your double slash attack as well. Naturally, for those of you that are new to the Charge Blade, you don't want to just like press A out of nowhere. You want to hold A down, and then you get a special attack. But you have to release it at the right time. It's kind of like the Greatsword. Remember how in the Greatsword I told you that you want to release right as your move reaches its apex, and not, you know, just keep the button pressed all the way, because that increases your damage. Well, with the double charge slash, it is the same thing. So if we hold it just right, as it flashes, you get a double charge slash. And this is one of the most efficient ways of charging up your files. Again, I'm going to be going over these moves, but if you've played Monster Hunter World, there's not really anything that changes, with the exception that you don't have access to Savage Axe Slash, okay? So, following up with the double charge slash, you can follow it up with another X attack, which gives you this round slash at the end, which also comes with a guard point, or you can follow it up with a shield bash by pressing X plus A. By the way, you can do X plus A at pretty much any point during your combos, and it goes into that shield bash. So like 1, 2, shield bash, 1, shield bash, double charge slash, shield bash. So like this particular move is a very versatile move, and it usually, I think you get the file effect whenever you do it. So yeah, these are kind of like your bread and butter sword moves. Naturally, you can still block by pressing the right trigger, just like Sword and Shield. So that's the sword moveset. There is one thing that I haven't shown yet, which is the advancing slash, which works also kind of like Sword and Shield by pressing X and A from neutral, but while moving forward. It just like makes your character lunge forward while performing an attack. So again, this is a move that we already knew. Now, another move that is in the charge blade that I consider to be essential that everybody learns is you can press A plus a direction after any attack to get your character to slide in that general direction, which is very good for positioning, and it gives this weapon a ton of mobility. It is also something very good for you to measure out where you can do your super amped elemental discharge or your amped elemental discharge. We'll talk about that when we're going over the axe mode. Just keep this in mind. At any point during your combos, you can just press A and a direction, and your character will go in that general direction. Okay? So, yeah, this is one of the key aspects of this weapon's mobility. A and a direction. Like, it just makes the weapon so friggin' good. It is insane. Now, the thing about the charge blade is that you can swap it into axe mode by pressing right trigger and X. So that move is still here. If you then want to go back to the sword, you press the right trigger again, or ZR. If you guys actually know what the names of the buttons are in the Switch, it's called ZR and ZL for some reason. But yeah, it's the right trigger, okay? And another thing to keep in mind is that the morph of sword mode into axe mode is still a guard point. So this is a guard point. So if a monster is about to hit you and you do this, you're going to guard it and you're going to be able to do a counter attack with it. Anyways, what are your options when you are in axe mode? Well, when you're in axe mode, you can do your X attack, which basically does this combo. Or you can do your A attacks, which do this. Now, the most important thing about the A attacks is that that second one actually does 2 file effects at the cost of 1 file. So usually you want to maximize how many times you get to do this move, where you do the double spins right there. It's one of the most important moves of the charge blade, so that is something that you want to keep in mind. Usually there are several attacks that can lead you to that move and that follow up into that move. So like if you go forward X and then just do A, it goes straight into that move, which is much better than doing A and wasting a file and then doing it again, okay? The other thing is that that particular slash also naturally transitions into the more devastating attacks of the charge blade. So like if you go X and then double A and then you keep pressing A, you're going to go into an amped elemental discharge. And what that does is a ton of damage if you manage to land that on a monster, okay? So that is something that you want to keep in mind. You can also go to that amped elemental discharge by spamming X and A if you are in sword mode. So you go X, A, and boom. Okay? Now, there are other things that you can do with the charge blade that I can't show you properly here, but you'll probably see me doing it in the gameplay that I will show throughout this video, which are charging your files. So the way the charge blade works is the more you hit the monsters with any attack, but particularly with the charge double slash, the more your files will start charging. This is indicated by the files glow on the top left-hand side. If they are glowing yellow, you will be able to charge 3 files into your shield. If they are glowing red, you'll be able to charge 5 files into your shield. Now again, I can't demonstrate this properly without actually hitting monsters, so you'll be seeing this throughout some of the gameplay that I show in this video, but in this training area I can't show you. But in order for you to load those files into your shield, what do you have to do? Well, when you get to that glow, you hold the right trigger and A button, and it will charge your shield. Now, this will put files onto your shield, which you can then expend by going into axe mode and using those A attacks that we were talking about. Those will spend files. As a matter of fact, if you go all the way with the A attacks into an amped elemental discharge, it will spend a file and get 3 explosions on whatever piece of the monster you happen to hit. So that's pretty cool, but that's not all you want to do with the charge blade naturally, because basically once you get those 5 files, what you want to do is load up your shield and charge it even further in order to get a damage bonus whenever you're in axe mode. And the way to do that is to do whatever move you want to do to get into the amped elemental discharge. So if you're in sword mode, the easiest way is spamming X plus A. But before you get to the end of amped elemental discharge, you're going to cancel out of it by pressing the block button. And it will look something like this. And that will load up your shield, and your shield will start glowing red. And when your shield starts glowing red, that means that you're going to be dealing more damage whenever you're in axe mode, and you'll also deal file damage whenever you perform a guard point, which, like I mentioned, is if a monster's about to attack you and you press the right trigger and X, that's a guard point. Or if the monster catches you at the end of a round slash. So if you guys remember, I told you after a charge double slash, you press X, that's a round slash. If the monster catches you there, that is another guard point, and I believe there's a couple of more guard points throughout the Charge Blade. I'm not going to be going too in depth with that because, you know, it is still a demo and I still want to eventually do my proper guide for Charge Blade. But yes, so you load up your shield, and after loading up your shield, you can go and you can get yourself some more files by, you know, again, repeatedly attacking the monsters and loading up those files. And then if your shield is fully loaded and you have full files and you go for the amped elemental discharge, that is going to do a different move, and it will also cause like a bunch of file discharges all across the monster because it uses every file in your weapon to deal damage to the monster itself. And that is called the super amped elemental discharge, and it is incredibly satisfying to pull off. Now, there might be a situation where you are fighting a monster and you're like, I don't want to do a super amped elemental discharge. So what you want to do is right as you're doing the amped elemental discharge, you press back and X, and that'll cancel out your super elemental discharge into a regular amped elemental discharge. And you guys are like, what? And it's like, trust me, if you end up using this weapon long enough, you will eventually come to understand why this is important, so I should mention it, because I know that I didn't mention it in my original Charge Blade guide all the way back in Monster Hunter World, but, you know, I've come to learn the importance of that little bit of tech. Now, there's one more thing that I can teach you, which is after you charge your shield and it is glowing red, there's also a way for you to charge your sword. As a matter of fact, you usually want to do this as one movement, and the way that you do it is when you are loading the files after your shield is red and you're loading more files into it, you hold down your right trigger and A, and immediately after you hold down on X, and that is going to cause your shield to charge your sword, and then if you release it at the right time, you'll also deal an elemental condensed slash. And what that does is going to charge your sword, and then even in sword mode, you will do file hits on the monster, which again, you will be seeing throughout some of the gameplay that I will show across the video. But that is like the bread and butter basics of the Charge Blade for all those of you who are trying to main the weapon out there. Now, like I said, I myself always struggle to play Charge Blade in demos because it does not have the skills that I want. That's not to say that the weapon is not good, it's just to say that I don't find it as fun as I tend to find the weapon once I actually get stuff like Focus, Magazine, and whatnot. There's a lot of weapons that, you know, for me, they only seem to work properly once you get the right skills in place. But overall, I think that the Charge Blade is in a pretty good place because it was already in a pretty good place in Monster Hunter World. And that really hasn't changed all that much in Monster Hunter Rise. So I think the weapon's in a good place. Now, let's take a look at the Silkbind techniques. I bet you guys were thinking that I've forgotten about the Silkbind techniques. No. So the two Silkbind techniques that are available to us is, number one, I actually don't remember the name of it, but I think it's a sliding morph slash or something, but it is left trigger and X, and it does this. Now, this particular move is not a move that I like, and it is a move that I find extremely clunky to use. So it's a gap closer, and it gives you hyper armor while you're doing it. So I think the hyper armor is an interesting thing for a move like this. But basically the whole point of this is to morph your weapon into axe mode, and then it sets you up to do the double A slash that we talked about as one of the most important moves of axe mode. So you can go from this, and then you press A, and you do the double axe slash, and you can go straight into an amped elemental discharge. I believe you can also go straight into amped, right? Yep, you can also go straight into amped elemental discharge if you so desire, or you can use it to close the gap and then go back into sword mode. That's also a a choice that you can do. So it's kind of like a multi-use type of thing. So it can be used offensively if you're to close a gap and go into axe mode, and it can be used just defensively for you to get away from a monster because, again, you have hyper armor while you're doing it. And it can also be used for, I don't freaking know, dude. You can just follow it up with a super amped elemental discharge. But I don't know, for some reason, this particular skill just does not gel well with me. Like most of the times that I tried using it in hunts, I would end up whiffing it. I don't know, because there are other moves like this in the game that I find really, really good. Like the one from the Greatsword, I really like it. The Power Sheath. The one from the Switch Axe, I also really, really like it. But the one from the Charge Blade, for whatever reason, it just does not work for me. I can't get it to, I can't get to really exploit a monster's weakness with it. The other Silkbind ability that we have is the Charge Blade counter, which basically gives you this. And this is a counter that fills out the entirety of your files if you successfully land this counter. Now, guys, you might remember I talked about this counter when I talked about the Gun Lance, because the Gun Lance has a similar counter that restores your sharpness instead of restoring your files, but it lasts 1/3 of the time. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to this particular counter lasting longer. Because it lasts longer, it means it's more forgiving, while at the same time, it's also a little bit more punishing. And that is because you can do this, and if the monster doesn't hit you, you're stuck in place for longer. Whereas with the Gun Lance one, you're not stuck in place as long, but it also means you have a tighter window to parry. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both those counters. It's not as black and white as I had mentioned in my Gun Lance video. But to be honest, I prefer the Charge Blade one because it's a little bit more lenient as to when you can use it. And usually you can get away from most things if the monster happens to miss you. I don't think that that is a massive problem. But, it is what it is. But it's another guard point for the Charge Blade, and it fills out the entirety of your files. Now, the really cool thing about that is that you can go from, let's say you have full files and you do a super amped elemental discharge into a monster, and you can go from that straight into a block. The monster hits you again, and if he hits you, you can counter into another super amped elemental discharge, which is very, very satisfying. So you can really do some interesting things with the Charge Blade counter, in my opinion. Because, yeah, you can do that. You can also do a condensed elemental slash and charge up your sword from it. So, like, basically, whenever you do this, you can finish it up. If you get hit, you can finish it up with X plus A, or you can finish it up with just X. And if you do X plus A, it'll do super amped elemental discharge. If you do X, it is going to do a condensed elemental slash and keep you in sword mode. Yeah, those are the two Silkbind arts. And again, I think that someone that really puts in more effort than what I did, they'll probably get a lot more out of that morph slash thing than I ended up getting. And I'm actually curious to hear from you guys that have been playing the Rise demo, particularly if you happen to be a Charge Blade main. Let me know what you think about that Silkbind art in the comment section down below. The one where it morphs you into axe mode and gives you all of these other things that you can combo into. Let me know what you think about that, because again, in theory, it seems like it's a really great skill, but for some reason, when it came to practice, for me, it always felt awkward. And also let me know your opinions on the counter, because I'm very, very curious. But as I was editing the video, I noticed that I did not talk about aerial Charge Blade at all, and there is a very important thing that is gone from the Charge Blade, and that is, like I mentioned in some of my videos already, it also has lost its sliding attack, which was basically whenever you slid, you were able to do a slashing attack similar to the Sword and Shield, which was yet another attack that I really, really, really enjoyed to take advantage of whenever I was in a slope or something against a monster. It did really good mounting damage, but not only that, it was just a very agile attack that you could do. And it really sucks to see that particular attack go away, because usually you would get to do like 2 slashes, and then on top of it, it would do like an upward slash, which you could combo into an aerial. So yeah, it was a little bit disappointing to see that go, but naturally everything else remains pretty much the same. So you can do a sword slash by pressing X whenever you are coming off of a ledge. Same thing if you do like an advancing slash off of a ledge, that also works. And if you want to go off the ledge in axe mode, you can just press the block button or the right trigger, and you get an attack off of axe mode, which is usually the one that you tend to default to because it'll deal more damage than your sword slashes. So, but yeah, that's kind of like the aerial options of the Charge Blade. You can also do this from the wire bug. So basically just pressing ZL and X will get you up there. And then you can do either a sword swing or an axe swing. But, you know, there's not really a whole lot to say other than I really miss the sliding attack of the Charge Blade. You know, other than that, most of the weapon has remained unchanged. Again, with the exception of not having Savage Axe Slash, which I still believe will probably make it onto the game in some way, shape, or form. But that's going to be it for the Charge Blade. Overall, pretty solid, but I can't wait to actually try it out with focus and load up. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you did not enjoy this video, hit the dislike button. Feedback is important. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.